Now, the next point becomes, do they have the right candidates? What did you hear about the weekend's interviews? Now, we already know that Ziegler has stepped out because he's going to stay with the New England Patriots. That was more or less expected. But you still have George Paton, who I think obviously would be one of the top candidates out there. Mm-hmm. You have Champ Kelly, and you have Fontenot out of New Orleans. So those seem to be the top ones. And, of course, Brian Stark here internally. So those are the top four guys. They met with them all this weekend. We haven't heard anything, but so far, what are you understanding about it?
Brian Stark is the fallback, the internal candidate if everything goes wrong kind of thing. And the other three are in the mix. I would suggest that there are scenarios in which you could get Peyton and Champ Kelly both, because the director of pro player personnel would be an advancement for Champ Kelly. He's the assistant director for the Bears. So there are scenarios where you can get more than one of these guys in the building, because remember, we got to fill the Matt Russell job. So I think that if you're the Broncos, you're trying to weigh this thing out. I think those three were always the three. We kind of hinted at that a little bit. Ziegler was always to pick the brain of the Pats organization. Stark was always a fallback. So, you got three names here, and that's really kind of where it's at. I suspect that we'll hear something this week. I personally think that Peyton and Kelly are out there. I know other reporting has Fontenot, but you're not being able to get Fontenot in the building for an in-person interview is really tough right now, and that's kind of a thing. So if they're unable to do that, I think that and the decision has to come this week. I think that kind of sort of frames it a little bit for you. I'm fine with any of the three. All three are great at what they do. They all come from the pro player side of the house, which is interesting. They don't really come from the college scouting side of the house, which is interesting. And I think that, that they all come from having to make decisions on the pro player side. You go look at people that were brought in, free agents that were brought in. Peyton was instrumental in getting Kirk Cousins to the Minnesota Vikings. Champ Kelly was instrumental in getting Khalil Mack to the Chicago Bears. And then you go look at the New Orleans Saints and what they were able to do, and Fontenot has been instrumental in getting guys like Emmanuel Sanders to come down there. On the defensive side of the ball, they've had some pretty good acquisitions as well. So, and they built a good, strong, deep team. Each one of those guys has been involved with building a team. Now, the Vikings right now are in the midst of a bit of a rebuild, specifically defensively, but I think overall. If you're a fan of wanting to build the Broncos up deep, I don't think you can go wrong with any of the three.
No, it doesn't seem like that. And honestly, like people will try to frame this as, well, why didn't they go after a name or a guy that had previous GM experience? I mean, I took this more as a lean towards bridging the gap and into the future, more so than, hey, do we need to go hire John Dorsey because he's done it before?
I don't think Dorsey was on their radar. I think if they were going to go with somebody who had previous experience, they would have reached out. They did reach out to that person, but that person is already kind of a finalist for another job and would take that job. And that would be Rick Smith, formerly of the Houston Texans. And he's a finalist for another job right now, and I think that he's already given his word on that. But Rick Smith would have, I think, been the guy.
Okay, and that makes a little bit of sense. And then maybe that will quell some of the people out there that are saying that the Broncos are only looking for a puppet, because they did obviously reach out to more than just guys that are up-and-comers.
Well, nobody should be thinking this is a puppet anyway. Like, that does not make sense.
Nobody sane is thinking that. Right. But trust me,
there are people out there.
There are people out there that are saying that as a result of not actually targeting established or former GMs, that the Broncos are basically saying it as an organization that they're almost not taking this seriously. And I don't see it that way whatsoever. But again, you have to hire the right guy. And the opportunity presents itself here where as long as that candidate understands what their role is going to be. And remember, they still have to hire a director of football.
Director of pro player personnel.
That's right, pro player personnel. They still have to hire that position too. So all this is a little bit, I don't know, it's a little bit of a work in progress, right? I mean, you're going into this with sort of an expectation of what you hope it looks like. But on the other side, I mean, you're talking about, replacing a guy that's been the GM for 10 years. You pointed out the other day, that just doesn't happen very often, that you're replacing a guy not only that is in John Elway, but you're also replacing the GM of an organization that's been here for 10 years. So there is really no obvious way to do this. But I'm looking forward to seeing what they do. I happen to like these candidates. I think Payton would be my preference at this point. The guy has a ton of experience. They've built some really good teams out there in Minnesota. Comes highly recommended. If I had to choose one, Payton would be my top choice. I like Kelly as a pro personnel guy.
I do too, and I really would love to see either. I don't think you can go wrong with Payton or a Fontenot or Kelly. I don't think you can. My dream scenario is you get two of those minds in the building. And if you can get Payton and Kelly, I'm here for that. Get two great minds in the building that have a working relationship. That's huge. And then you can get those guys in there with Vic Fangio, who's got experience with Champ Kelly. I think that's a good thing. I also like Fontenot. I don't think you can go wrong in this scenario. The people who keep asking me who's the front runner, who's this, who's that. When you came into it, Champ Kelly had the most cachet, I think, in the building, but Fontenot interviews very well. And I tell you, he turned down a GM job before. He didn't want any part of the New York Jets. After talking to their ownership. So there's Payton's a well-respected guy. Fontenot's a well-respected guy. Fontenot's got other interviews around the league, other people trying to interview him. So I don't think you can go wrong with any one of these. I think the Broncos are set up as long as they get one of those three, and maybe two of those three if, like I said, this thing plays out the way we think it could. I think they're in great shape. I really do.